This idea of running the race is probably the most beautiful metaphor for faith and for life in the whole Bible. It's one of my favorites. I get such a picture every time of us running along this path through the woods and cheering and raising our arms when we get to the finish line. I love that metaphor. We use it all the time in funerals where we talk about people having run their race in faith and now getting to rest, to sit by the side of the road and cheer on the folks yet to come. I like to picture them with picnic baskets and glasses of wine in their hands and eating chocolates as they celebrate us, as they cheer us on as we run our race. Races and marathons are such a crucial metaphor because it holds within them a truth that is inexpressible in any other way, which is that life requires discipline. Showing up for God every day requires discipline. Running a race with other people in a team sport, which Christianity is, requires us to remain focused on the journey. See, the truth about marathons is that it's not about your speed. You don't win a marathon by being the fastest person on the field. You win a marathon by choosing every day and every time and every moment to put one foot in front of the other, to take the next step. Marathons are run in stages, and you pace yourself for each stage depending on what your goal is for that particular part of the race. You don't run at your fastest speed when you set out. You don't maintain your opening speed for the middle part of the race. And you save your greatest and deepest and hardest work, your fastest part of your run, for the end. They call it the kick. And it's the most important part, the most important stage in the race. You have to make sure you have some energy saved up for that part. You have to hold a little bit of yourself back for earlier on in the race so that when it comes to the end, you have the energy and the discipline and the stick-to-itiveness to make it to the end. Life also has stages. When our youngest child had his surgery in January, we had assumed it would be a short race. He would go, he would get the cast on, we'd deal with the cast for a month or two, which would be difficult and challenging, but it wouldn't be life-changing, right? It's just, we can do anything for 6 weeks. And slowly those 6 weeks turned into 6 months. 6 months of bi-weekly doctor's appointments and meeting with occupational therapy, of braces and dealing with the consequences of those braces, of every night chasing a toddler around the house trying to strap on a piece of plastic so she would go to bed, of the inevitable sores that come from wearing a brace every day, through infections, through all of the things that came along that were unexpected and expected parts of the challenge, expected and unexpected parts of this stage of the journey. It was 6 months. And last week, when the doctor said it was time that we could take a break from the brace, we could take a break from this every other week routine of traveling to Charlotte and back, that those moments, those times, this was the moment that we could celebrate. It may only be a stage. It will only be a stage. There'll be more journey to come in this journey to wholeness for him. But it is a journey that we took, knowing that it would require discipline and endurance, that it would require choices to make the hard decision to chase the toddler around the room, to do what was best for him, even when he didn't really like it. And it wouldn't have been possible without a team, without all of the people who stepped up to help us throughout, from people who just texted us prayers and we were thinking about you and how's it going, to medical folks that we could call and ask, is this normal? Is this okay? Is there anything we can do? To friends who went and got medicine for us, to others who supported us in so many other ways. We would not have made it to the end of the race without that team. It's such a great metaphor. But our culture has turned this metaphor of a race, into something else. I think we've turned literally everything in American culture into a competition. From childhood spelling bees to the type of cell phone you have, to your job, to your house. We are steeped in a culture which values winning more than any other value. We are interested in us. We are focused on us. We are most concerned about how we win. Who cares about how you get there? The ends justify the means, after all. The process isn't important as long as you win. In fact, we'll excuse almost any behavior as long as the person who does it is a winner. Now, I love sports. I love sports as much as the next person. I've got sports stuff all over behind me. We watch all kinds of sports in our house, and I watched every bit as much of the Olympics as you could. Competition in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's fun, it's enjoyable. But when everything in life is a competition, that's where the problem comes. When where we go to school or the camps we send our kids to is a signal about how much we care about their chances of winning at life. When our politics is a sport where one side wins and the other side loses, as if we're all not engaged in this process. We've had to stop watching cooking shows in our house because the kids were sitting down at the table and judging my attempts at macaroni and cheese. We compete over everything. And in and of itself, that's not necessarily bad. What is bad is how it changes our attitude towards each other. We were designed to root for each other, to support each other. And when competition and winning is our primary value, our primary driver, it causes us to become inwardly focused. It causes us to put other values to the side. It roots into us bitterness and anger and hatred. We root for and we support athletes who have done terrible things as long as they win. This fall, my husband, along with millions of others, will begrudgingly root for a quarterback who was suspended from the league for a year because of the severity of his crimes, and will justify it because he throws a nice spiral and can scramble out of the pocket. Competition in and of itself isn't bad. The problem is the way it changes how we look at each other. It makes life into an either-or proposition. If you win, it means I lose. If you get an ounce of power, it means I lose an ounce of power. And so instead of working together and reaching a solution to a multi-layered and nuanced situation, instead of gathering the best ideas from all the people at the table, we throw on our jerseys and we cheer on the destruction of the other people. We don't even much care if it makes the problem worse, as long as our solution is the one that wins. And all of this has the effect of driving us further and further inside ourselves. And the more we compete to win, the more focused we are on retaining and controlling power, as long as we root primarily for our group, the best interests of us, the further and further inside we are. It's a self-defeating cycle because you can't see much of the world from inside of the wagon. Last week, while I was watching track and field, we were watching the men's 1500 meter race. The show had done its hype thing beforehand. It introduced us to the major players. They showed us videos of their family life. There were lots of cute toddler babies running around in grassy fields. The two frontrunners, Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Josh Kerr, had been sniping at each other for weeks. They'd set up this competition as between just two runners. You get the feeling that they would be so dominant of this race, it didn't matter that anybody else was running. They did do a perfunctory gloss over of the two Americans in the race. Not much because they thought they had a chance, or that they were supposed to win. It was a showdown between two, Ingebrigtsen and Kerr, on the track and in the media. Their mouths had done quite a lot of talking. And so when the race began, Kerr and Ingebrigtsen set out racing. Ingebrigtsen set an unmatchable, unendurable pace, well in front of everyone else. The race went on, and others slowly caught up because Ingebrigtsen couldn't maintain the pace he was running for. He was so focused on himself, he'd forgotten that he needed everybody else to win. You see, long distance running is a team sport. You need the pack to help you endure. He forgot that long distance running actually requires you to get help. You need the support of the other people to win. And so as his pace subsided, Kerr slowly caught up. And neck, the two rivals had spent the months before leading up to the event jawing at each other and focused on their competition. And they were literally looking at each other as the line. They were so focused on each other that they didn't even see the other runners in the race. And so the American Cole Hocker came up on the outside to win. And Ingebrigtsen, focused only on his competition, came fourth out of the medals altogether. When the reporter asked Cole Hocker how he had managed to win, he said, "Well, they were so focused on each other, I knew that I'd have a chance to sneak by. They wanted to beat each other so much that they didn't even see me. And that's how I won." He won because the other two were so focused on beating each other that they forgot that other people existed. When we focus solely on winning, or about our power, or anything really, as long as I win and you lose, we lose track of the way that the crowd actually helps. When we spend so much time worrying about other people and what they're doing, or worrying about what's best for us, what makes us as an individual fulfilled and happy, what we like to sing or what we like to eat or what we like to sit, we close our hands and our eyes. And it's in those places and those times that bitterness and anger take root. It's in those places and those times that we lose our pace. When we live out of our self-interest. When we lose the discipline of focusing on the group, we become isolated. And isolation does nothing if not cut us off from other people. You do from time to time hear in churches about in-groups or cliques. And what people mean by that is that there are times when it feels like people are so interested on themselves or so self-focused on what is best for them that they make that the most important part of their group experience. In-groups are essentially about who is allowed to have a voice at your table, who is allowed to sit with you. And we can become isolated. We can become isolated as individuals, and we can become isolated as groups, only hearing what our voices say. And everybody loses in those cases. When we become inwardly focused, everybody loses out. We heard the story of the warning of people becoming like Esau. Esau and his brother Jacob, they came out of the womb fighting. Jacob had literally a grasp on Esau's heel as they were born. They wrestled their entire lives. It was always about one side winning and the other losing. Their parents even set them up that way. Isaac preferred Esau. Rebekah preferred Jacob. And so their lives were about who wins, about who gets the blessing, about who gets the best seat at the table. None of them thinking about how they were a family together and how if they had worked together, they would be stronger. The blessings would be greater. There would be more than enough for everyone at the table. It created an environment where they were self-interested and self-focused. And so Esau, in his impulse, bargains away his seat at the table. He gives up his portion of the blessing for that momentary satisfaction of a bowl of soup. and it broke forever the relationship between Jacob and Esau. And so instead of being a family united together in blessing and working for the best interest of all people at the table, they fractured and split. They looked out for what was best for their group, their little bit of the family, both poorer for it. Grasping for wins leaves us with much less than what God has promised for us. Faith in life is not a race to win. Life instead is a race where the prize is won by the people who cross the finish line with the most at the table. It's won by the people who are able to gather the largest group, who can cross the finish line at the same time in the very same place as other people. Life should be run as a race where we're trying to split the gold medal amongst as many people as possible. But as long as we focus on this path and this journey as a zero-sum game, where if I win, you lose, then all of us will fall. As long as we run the race to be right. God calls the church to be a place where we have the discipline of humility, where we have the discipline of holding space for other people. And it's hard work. It is so easy to retreat back into what's comfortable and easy for us. It is so easy to focus on running our race at our pace that we leave others behind. What is harder is living as Jesus lived, sitting at table with others who make us uncomfortable, who have different life experiences than us. What requires the discipline of God is to ask ourselves the deeper and harder questions of how we make space. How many different people can I come in contact with this week? Real, genuine contact. Or do I find myself sticking to the lakes and the rivers and the paths that I'm used to? God calls us deeper. Do I only listen to and hear the voices of those within reaching distance of my seat? Do my prayers and hopes and wishes center on what's best for me and mine? Or am I seeking a vision of what's possible when I live into the kingdom that God has promised? They are not easy questions. They're not minor questions. They are central questions of our faith. They are essential to running a race successfully because it's a team sport. I don't just mean they're essential to winning the race. These questions are essential to competing in the race at all, to living into the vision that God has for us. Hebrews tells us that Jesus should be our pioneer. And if we learn nothing from Jesus, it's that opening up places and spaces in our hearts, casting a wider net, sitting on the hillside instead of inside the temple, makes the race easier to run. The hills and the valleys. God bless.